300-pound dudes tackling you on a frozen field, the last thing you want to do is stay out there. Believe me, the Rams players were thinking about the jacuzzi at their team hotel, that they find it laughable, but more laughable if they totally disregard the trade whatsoever. This guy has transformed the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. And you could argue the entire defense is going to be absolutely ferocious next year. But if your number one priority is to win a Super Bowl, then J.J. Watt is making a grave mistake. To ride this Chad Henne experiment for an entire game, I might need a whole bottle of Hennessy just to get through that. Guy who's won 8 division titles, who's made 5 AFC championship appearances, who's reached the Super Bowl 3 times and has won 2 Super Bowls for this organization. Aaron Rodgers has only won 1 Super Bowl with Green Bay. Drew Brees has only won 1 Super Bowl with New Orleans. There's only 13 quarterbacks in NFL history that have won multiple Super Bowls, and Big Ben is one of those individuals. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Glad you could join me on a Wednesday morning. A lot to discuss, including some big news in downtown Los Angeles with Staples Center being renamed. I'm going to touch on that and some interesting Malkin's moments. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure to stay tuned for that. But we have to start with the marquee game from last night in the NBA. The Golden State Warriors and the Brooklyn Nets, a potential finals preview, given how hot both of these two teams have been. The Warriors, of course, already had the best record in the NBA and in the Western Conference. The Brooklyn Nets had the second best record at the time, just behind the Washington Wizards. And these two teams collided yesterday. And the Warriors sent shockwaves through the NBA, collecting a huge statement win, 117-99 on the road. Steph Curry was absolutely sensational. 37 points, 5 assists, 7 rebounds, 9 of 14 from three-point line in 29 minutes, 12 of 19 from the floor. But it's so funny to me how quickly things can turn, how quickly we can kind of forget about the past. I remember I used to be an overnight camp counselor, and there was kind of a common feeling shared amongst all of the counselors that the days always felt so long. They were so exhaustive and they were so laborious that days felt like months because every single second just felt like hours. But then you look back, and at the end of the 2 months that you're there, those months felt like days because you kind of gloss over the amount of time that's transpired because you're now focused on the novelty of the present and on what today has in store. And for the first time in several years, that feeling like you can look back at a sports team, at a sports moment, and gloss over the last couple of years, expedite that process to focus on the now. This was the first time in years that I felt that way watching specifically this Golden State Warriors team last night. Because to watch where they came from, it's amazing how much you forget the journey that this specific organization has gone on. If you chronicle where the Warriors were just 2 years ago to where they are now, it's incredible. It's incredible because they had that run of 5 straight trips to the NBA Finals that unfortunately was capped off by a KD ruptured Achilles, a Klay Thompson torn ACL, KD leaving, Steph Curry breaking his wrist within the first 2 games of the next season. It's a tank. They get the number 2 pick. Then Klay Thompson ruptured his Achilles. And then all of a sudden, you think it's going to be another wash season, and Steph Curry leads the Warriors on this incredible run. They burst back onto the scene. They make a late push towards the end of the year. And now this year, they've got the best record in the NBA at 12-2. And it's funny because once again, now they're topped by the depth that they're showing, and they're perched at the very top of the NBA, on the top and the pinnacle of the NBA standings, just like they were 2 years ago. But the interesting thing about the Warriors is they're reminding us, and last night was a perfect example of why, they're reminding us just why we came to love this team. Because everything, and they're reminding us of that 2014, 2015 Warriors roster in particular that was spearheaded by Steph Curry, who was the lead engine, lead captain on that squad. And the interesting thing is, during those runs, what made that Warriors team so special, and we're seeing the same signs of it now, obviously was the greatness of Steph Curry. You were seeing that. Draymond and Clay, who Clay's obviously not currently on the team, but you had the confidence. You had the ball movement. You had the cutting. You had the backdoor cutting. You had the 4, 5, 6 picks cutting. You had Steph Curry moving all over the court. The ball movement, the unselfishness, the high quality of shots, the showmanship, and then the depth. Those teams had not only Steph, they had Clay, they had Draymond, they had Sean Livingston coming off the bench. You had Leandro Barbosa, you had Maurice Spates, Ian Clark for different stretches. Andrew Bogut, Harrison Barnes. This team was legitimately 10, 11, 12 deep. You look at the roster now, and you got Jordan Poole, who is thriving, who was one of my breakout players coming into this year. Toscano Anderson, Gary Payton has been playing well. Otto Porter, James Wiseman isn't even back yet. And this team possesses that same scintillating style of basketball. They still possess the same electricity, the still explosiveness from their best player. The ball movement, the passing is crisp. The defense is the number 1 rated defense in the NBA. That was one of the underrated calling cards of that championship and finals team several years ago, was their defensive prowess. They've returned to that form now. And all these guys are absolutely fearless, and it all emanates at the top of the head from Steph Curry. The confidence that he plays sprinkles down to the rest of the team, permeates throughout that locker room, throughout the players, throughout the coaches, throughout the coaching staff, throughout the executives. That's the type of impact that a guy like Steph Curry can have on a roster and a franchise. And last night, you saw the depth because Steph Curry was having to battle with some foul trouble a little bit, especially in the third quarter. And when he exited the game, by the time he returned, the lead had expanded, which had been the staple of the Warriors, those championship runs, especially the first couple years in 2014, 2015, and 2015, 2016. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, the starters would go to the bench. They come back after their usual second kind of quarter mid-game break, and the lead has ballooned in their favor. That's what made them so dynamic. That's what made them so special, and we're seeing that once again now. And Steph Curry is, of course, the catalyst behind it. He's the lead front runner for league MVP, even though it's just 14 games or 15 games for some teams into the NBA season. And he's been on such a torrid pace. And you look at his last 5 games, and again, this is no knock on Nikola Jokic. I said this last year, that I thought Steph Curry should have won league MVP last year for the impact that he was having on that Golden State Warriors team. People just wanted to dismiss it, or they wanted to emphasize kind of the first quarter of the season and not focus on the types of performances he was turning out the second half of the season. Not that Nikola Jokic wasn't worthy of that MVP, because he certainly was. He had a fantastic year, but to me, Steph was clearly the best player. And over his last 5 games, he's 37-7-5, 24-6-10, 44-5, 25-5-6, and 57-10. The guy's been stupendous. And it just goes to show the type of impact that him raining threes can have on opposing arenas. Barclays felt like there were more Golden State Warriors fans than the Brooklyn Nets fans. Now, I think part of it is, even though the Brooklyn Nets have been good this year, 10-5, there's still this cloud, there's still this shadow hanging over them with the uncertainty of Kyrie Irving and whether or not he will actually return to the team. I'm surprised that he's still gone from the team, but that's certainly playing a role into why the Brooklyn Nets have looked the way they look. James Harden, he's good, he's a great player, but he hasn't had the same profound impact that we've seen in the past. But today isn't about what the Golden State, what the Brooklyn Nets didn't do. Last night was about what the Golden State Warriors did do. And they have looked spectacular all year, and it's all because of this one 6'3" individual. And just, this is the best team in the NBA right now. I predicted that this would be the team to reach the Western Conference Finals, to face off against the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. Right now, that's not even looking like a good pick. Right now, it's looking like the favorite should be the Warriors, the way that they're playing. And they're just reminding us, again, this is why we fell in love with the team, because everyone rallied around Steph. They didn't have KD at the time. They weren't this juggernaut offensively because of an offseason signing. They were a juggernaut offensively because of the players that they developed within their system. And that's something that's special to watch, and it's special to be reminded of a couple years later when people thought there was no chance that was going to happen, because they had just accrued asset after asset after pick, traded for Andrew Wiggins, kind of serving that Harrison Barnes role to a lesser degree. And it's been fun to watch. And last night was a perfect example of why that was the case. So, okay. I want to transition to the NFL. So we are about 10 weeks into the NFL season. So I like coming out periodically with my latest top 5 rankings. I think that there are a couple different barometers that give us opportunities to assess teams, different moments, timestamps during a year that can give us some clarity as to where teams are. And I think right now is a great opportunity to do that once again. So here are my top 5 teams. Here we go. At number 5, got to start with the Buffalo Bills. Listen, I'll be the first to admit I've never been that bullish about the Buffalo Bills. I've never been fully sold on Josh Allen, but I'd be lying if I said they don't look like the 5th best team in the NFL right now. They're 6-3, second best record in the AFC. They have a number of quality wins against the Chiefs. Obviously, most notably, that was before the Chiefs kind of crumbled internally. And that loss against the Tennessee Titans, listen, I still think that was a game they should have won. They had an inexplicably bad loss to the Jaguars that I'm willing to overlook, because that week in the NFL just seemed to trip up every single favorite. No favorites won, it appeared, that week. So it was kind of an aberration, I believe. And they're the most balanced team right now in the NFL. Number 1 defensively for fewest yards allowed per game, fewest points per game. They're top 5 offensively. They're starting to establish a bit of a run game. Devin Singletary is coming back. He's healthy. Zach Moss is back and healthy. So they still have that threat. And Josh Allen right now, he's top 5 in passing yards. He's limiting his turnovers, 19 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. He's making better decisions. They've got the best turnover differential in the NFL, plus 14 differential, which I think speaks to how well coached they are. Give credit to Sean McDermott. They've got one of the best special teams units in the NFL, so they're good on all 3 phases of the game. And this is the big stat for me, is they're 49% on third down conversion. What does that mean? That means they keep drives alive. They do a great job. In fact, it's the best mark in the NFL for third down conversion, which once you start getting towards the later half of the year, in November, in December, in the postseason, can you convert on third down? That's huge. And a team that converts at a nearly 50% clip, that speaks volumes. And that's why I have them right now at number 5. At number 4, it's got to be America's team. I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys at 7-2. Listen, every team can have an occasional stinker in the NFL. They can have one of those clunky, kooky performances. We saw that against the Denver Nuggets against the Denver Nuggets, against the Denver Broncos. And the track record of the Dallas Cowboys, to their credit this year, has indicated that that loss to the Broncos is an anomaly, because the way that this team has played, they had gone kind of undefeated on that streak since losing the opener to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a walk-off field goal. They had won 6 straight games. Then they got shellacked, kind of had to reorient themselves a little bit. And they came out firing, and they destroyed the Atlanta Falcons to hold the Falcons to 3 points. Listen, that's a good defensive effort. And the bottom line is they still retain the number 1 attacking offense in the NFL. Dak Prescott is in a rhythm once again. He had missed the prior 2 weeks to that Broncos game, was out of rhythm. He's recaptured that rhythm. Michael Gallup is back, so they're really kind of fortifying that wide receiving core with Amari and CeeDee Lamb. Now Michael Gallup. They've got a bunch of playmakers all across the field right now. Their run game is back to being as dominant as it had been. Ezekiel Elliott is looking good. Tony Pollard is perhaps the best certified number 2 running back in the NFL. And the defense is very opportunistic. Micah Parsons, 6 sacks. Trayvon Diggs, say what you want about him taking chances, no risk it, no biscuit. Normally that term is used on the offensive side, but he takes chances, but he leads the NFL with 8 interceptions. So he's doing something right, Trayvon Diggs. And I just think that right now this team, again, over 45% on third down. So this Dallas Cowboys team is rounding into shape right now. And the way that their schedule is shaking out, they've got a great opportunity to still contend for the best overall record in the NFC. They're at 7-2. They're at 7-2. So I think that they really have a great chance of capturing a number 1 overall seed if some of their victories and potential matchups shake out properly. They obviously have a big game this weekend against the Kansas City Chiefs, but after that, relatively smooth sailing for the most part. At number 3 is the Arizona Cardinals. Right now, I have them at 8-2. A little worried about some of the injuries that they've been dealing with, but that's why I'm not going to knock them for losing against the Carolina Panthers. Listen, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins weren't available. Chase Edmonds exited early with an injury. And I think the game against the Carolina Panthers had more to do with the return of Cam Newton than the Cardinals' loss. I think that his impact was more profound than the loss of the actual game. They're still tied for the best record in the NFL, along with the NFC at 8-2. This is a really good team, and when healthy, Kyler Murray has been absolutely terrific. The chemistry that he's had with DeAndre Hopkins, with A.J. Green, with now Chase Edmonds, who he has in his backfield. The defense has been great, even with J.J. Watt being done for the year, undergoing that chest or that pec injury that will now that forced him to undergo surgery. So I really like this Arizona Cardinals team right now. They're top 3 in turnover differential. And when I talk about their run game, I've talked about Chase Edmonds, but James Conner leads the NFL in rushing touchdowns. He's got 12 on the year. So when they're in the red zone, they do a great job of finding the end zone. And that's something that's extremely difficult to do in the NFL. They've had not inexplicably, but they've had one bad loss all year with their full complement of characters. And that was to the Green Bay Packers, where the Packers didn't have Devontae Adams, didn't have Allen Lazard, didn't have Valdez Scantling, and they still went to Arizona and dominated and manhandled the Cardinals 24-21. That was the only game that Kyler Murray hasn't looked good, that the team hasn't looked good. Again, I don't consider that loss to the Carolina Panthers entirely on them. So I thought that overall the Cardinals are looking really good right now. Best record in the NFC West. And if they can just be healthy, this is a really, really good football team. And at number 2 is the Tennessee Titans. Listen, I don't know why, I don't know how, by hook or by crook. There's nothing that's going to tell me that they're not the number 2 overall team. Do I firmly believe it? No, but nothing suggests, there's nothing I can point to that should tell me that the Tennessee Titans aren't the second best team in the NFL. There's nothing. Their record speaks for themselves. 8-2, best record in the AFC, tied for the best record in the NFL. And they're just finding ways to win. And they're one of the few teams that has a true identity. There is a clear understanding what this team is. A physical, running-minded team that is just fearless. And they're very businesslike. They embody their coach. They embody everything that he stands for. And when I just watch the Tennessee Titans, this is more just purely out of respect for Coach Vrabel, for that coaching staff, for the players, for what they've accomplished, for the production, for the productivity that we've seen from them. And again, they're just a disciplined football team, and they're not flashy. They don't showboat. They get in, get out. They do their job. And what they've been able to do, even since losing Derrick Henry, their MVP candidate, they beat the brakes off the Rams, and they beat an above 500 New Orleans Saints team. They've got wins over the Seahawks twice, the Colts, the Chiefs, the Bills. They're beating everyone on their schedule. And they've got the Texans this week. And again, I'll just give them one extra week until potentially Derrick Henry comes back. So right now, I really like the Tennessee Titans at number 2. But at number 1, listen, the best team in the NFL right now is the Green Bay Packers. They are the best team in the NFL. They're playing like the best team in the NFL. They're 8-2. But the big thing is, I've never been more impressed by the Green Bay Packers, especially in the Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers era, than over the last month. What they've accomplished over the last month has been sensational, has been absolutely amazing. And I think that the loss to the Kansas City Chiefs was one of the best losses that I've seen by a team in the NFL in quite some time. And it's all sparked by the defense. Defensively, if they can continue to put out and churn out these types of defensive performances, well, now you have something special here. Because to blanket Seattle this past weekend, to hold the Kansas City Chiefs to 13 points, to go on the road without, as I just mentioned, Devontae, Allen Lazard, Valdez-Scantling, to go to Arizona, to win on the road 24-21 without those 3 guys for Aaron Rodgers, speaks volumes. And the defense has been doing it without Jair Alexander, who's one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. David Bakhtiari is still not healthy. He's about to return. They've got some players coming back. Obviously, very worrisome, the injury sustained to Aaron Jones. That's a big-time injury, no doubt. And hopefully he returns healthy. And it looks like he will, but at least after 2 weeks. But I just have been really impressed with the Packers because now defensively they're able to complement their offense. And not only complement, they're top 3 in defensive yards allowed, in defensive points allowed. This has been a really good football team from top to bottom, and they're showing it. And once again, Aaron Rodgers is playing at a high level, maybe not as supremely of a high level as he was prior to COVID and whatnot. But if you kind of discount the one loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, they've gone undefeated since their opener against the Saints. So this team is just on a roll right now, and I personally think that they're the best team in the NFL right now. So I want to transition to college football for a second. The latest college football rankings were released. It was the 3rd edition, as we are now rounding into last 19 days of the regular season in college football. So the playoff committee yesterday released its top 25. Georgia was at number 1, Alabama number 2. The top 4, actually the top 6 and 7 was still the same. Alabama 2, Oregon 3, Ohio State 4, Cincinnati on the outside looking in at 5, Michigan at 6, and Michigan State at 7. Then at 8 was Notre Dame, and at 9 was Oklahoma State. But for me, there were a couple big takeaways here. And I think that, first of all, if you're Cincinnati, I actually really like the position right now for Cincinnati. You knew it was going to be an uphill battle from the start. Let's not get it twisted. There weren't any situations or scenarios where Cincinnati was definitively going to be a shoo-in into the college football playoff. That was never going to happen. So the question is, are they in the best chance? Are they in the best position than they have ever been to make the college football playoff? And based on some recent results, the answer is yes. So here is why, for two key reasons, why Cincinnati should be feeling fantastic this morning when you're looking up, or I guess last night when you saw the rankings were revealed. First of all, to me, I think that the Big 12 is officially out of contention. I know that Oklahoma State at 9-1 is still at number 9 right now, but to me, Oklahoma was their best shot at potentially getting a Big 12 team in the college football playoff. Whether you wanted it to be Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, I think both of those teams needed to be in the top 10. And the fact that Oklahoma now, that was on the outside looking in, that was a potential wild card team to leapfrog over Cincinnati, being that they're in a Power 5 conference, the fact that they've now suffered their first loss and they're out of contention, I think means that the entire conference is out of contention. I don't think Oklahoma State, a one-loss Oklahoma State team, is going to usurp an undefeated Cincinnati team. So that's first of all. And the second thing is we're seeing that for Cincinnati, they're going to ride the coattails right now of Notre Dame. And how highly the committee is viewing Notre Dame, the fact that they have them at number 8 is huge for Cincinnati, because that's their only quality, their real quality win in the eyes of the committee all year. Going to South Bend, winning 24-13 on the road. As long as Notre Dame continues to be highly ranked and to be viewed as a great team in the eyes of the committee, the longer that they stay atop the rankings, that is only going to buttress the chances of Cincinnati at making the college football playoff. If Notre Dame slips up or falters down the stretch of the year, that's big trouble for Cincinnati. They need Notre Dame in particular to continue to win out, to get as close to the outside of the top 5, or top 4 rather, as they possibly can. That's something that needs to happen for them, because again, I think that Cincinnati, this is about the best position that you could be in given the circumstances, given the situations, given the fact that you don't have that built-in equity with the college football playoff committee as a non-Power 5 team. You can't ask for a better position right now. Obviously, ideally, you want to be in the top 4. You're at number 5, and the reality is there are about 2 other teams around them where things are going to shake out, especially in the Big Ten. You've got Ohio State, Michigan State, and Michigan all facing each other over this next 2-week stretch. So Ohio State's at number 4 right now. Obviously, if Ohio State wins out, that means that Michigan and Michigan State will have received 2 losses, which would then remove Michigan State and Michigan out of contention. So that clears the way for another opponent to not surpass Cincinnati and allow them to just kind of be in that singular 5th position. That's if Ohio State wins out. Obviously, if Michigan wins out, well, the problem is if Michigan and Michigan State win out, where Michigan beats Ohio State, Michigan State beats Ohio State as well, Michigan in particular isn't going to get a chance to play in a conference game. That's going to go to Michigan State. So I don't know if Michigan is going to jump frog Cincinnati. Michigan State, if they win out, that could be a problem. That is a problem in the Big Ten. But again, now you remove Ohio State, you remove Michigan out of contention. So Cincinnati is still in that same position. Oregon, there's a potential that they might slip up. They've got a big matchup this weekend against Utah, who just got ranked, I think, 24th in the playoff rankings. There's a Pac-12 championship game. That's a possibility that they might slip up there. So there are some chances for Cincinnati right now. Again, the big takeaway was Oklahoma lost. That was an undefeated Big 12 team. Now you can no longer make the argument that there's an undefeated Big 12 team, which is big. The only potential issue, and this is the one danger right now, is Alabama. And you're seeing repeatedly now by the committee how they view Alabama as the number 2 team. The fact that Oregon and Ohio State haven't unseated Alabama is a bit disconcerting, because what it's saying is, despite that loss, they still view the Tide as the best team in the nation. And even in the win over LSU, which wasn't that impressive, the manner in which they won wasn't that impressive. They're still viewing them as the number 2 team. And so it doesn't matter that Ohio State shellacked Purdue. Now, maybe if Ohio State, if they run the table and they beat Michigan State in dominant fashions, maybe then they'll jump frog Alabama. But the problem is right now, the committee views so highly, the perception of Alabama is so strong that it's shaking up, it's setting up to be a clash in the SEC championship game between Georgia and Alabama. And the problem is, if Alabama beats Georgia, obviously both teams are in. And I'm not so sure, I can't say definitively that if Georgia beats Alabama in a nail biter or in an overtime game, even in a really close contest, that Alabama's not going to just finish as a 4 seed potentially. I just don't even know if I see that happening. They might view a 2-loss Alabama team ahead of Cincinnati. So I think the biggest threats right now for a lot of teams, I mean, especially just other conferences, because if you're a conference not named the SEC, this could apply to you. But especially if you're Cincinnati right now, the biggest threats are obviously Alabama. And I would say, honestly, perhaps a Michigan State are the 2 teams that either are cinched in their spot or on the outside looking in that could leapfrog them. But again, one less competitor to worry about. Oklahoma's now officially out of the picture. Again, with Michigan, I'm not as concerned because right now they're not looking like they'll get a chance to reach the Big Ten championship game. Given that they lost to Michigan State, they would need to beat Ohio State and for Michigan State to lose to Penn State for that to happen. That's tough. That's a tall order. Okay. So this was an interesting story, kind of a shocking revelation that I wasn't expecting to talk about. The iconic, the legendary Staples Center in downtown Los Angeles is apparently going to be renamed to Crypto.com Arena in a reported $700 million naming rights deal. It's reportedly the largest and the richest naming rights contract ever in the history of sports. And it will be enacted starting on Christmas Day, actually, when the Lakers face the Brooklyn Nets in the NBA. So that will be a fantastic matchup and a good day to unveil it. Apparently, they're changing its name for the first time. Staples Center is changing its name for the first time in 22 years. AEG Entertainment informed the public. And the lease will be a 20-year lease. So they're paying $700 million for the naming rights change over the course of 20 years. Obviously, that was the same type of contract that the office retailer, Staples, made to obtain those naming rights back in 1999 when Staples Center was first built. Because that was the original name of the arena when it was established, was the Staples Center on October 17th, 1999. Now, obviously, right now, it's home to, Staples Center is home to the Lakers, the Clippers, the Kings, and the LA Sparks. And before that, obviously, the Lakers in particular played at the Fabulous Forum in downtown Inglewood. But I have to say, for me personally, when I was reading this story, when I was getting this notification, I got a little emotional thinking about thinking about a name change because Staples Center has just been so synonymous with LA, with sports, and especially for this city that is the second biggest metropolis in the United States. And for me, I was born in 1997. So technically, the Lakers still played for 2 more years during my infancy stages and more primitive years at the Fabulous Forum. But then 1999, 2 years into my life, they moved to Staples Center. So Staples Center is really all that I have ever known and loved because that's the team that's the arena that I most resonate with when it comes to sports. And it just got me a little bit teary yesterday, thinking that now every time you show up, you're not going to see that red hue glowing from the top of the arena that has Staples. Or whenever I would take off the runway or land in Los Angeles, you fly down and you see in downtown LA, you see the Staples Center just kind of superimposed, it looks like, in the sky. And that's just going to be really sad. I think it's going to be really weird. Obviously, it's not the arena changing. It's the same arena. They're just changing the name. But I had a lot of mixed emotions. Obviously, cryptocurrency is huge, and crypto.com is one of the largest cryptocurrency companies in the world. They've really been on a big spending spree. I believe that they originate in Asia, either in China or Korea. And they just this whole offseason, they've been on this huge spending spree, getting their names to be the official sponsorships of Paris Saint-Germain, PSG, of the Philadelphia 76ers. They're on their jersey. There are other huge sporting entities that they are connected to now. But for me, it's just going to be weird. You know, the Lakers won 6 NBA titles at Staples Center. The Sparks won 3 WNBA titles at Staples Center. The Kings won 2 Stanley Cup championships at Staples Center, both at home. And it's just going to be weird. It's a weird feeling to go to downtown and to not, or listen to a broadcast and not hear "Welcome to Staples Center." That's just, it's kind of a chilling feeling. It'll take some time. It'll take some time to adjust to that. But listen, this is part of the business, and good for them that they can demand those types and command those types of numbers for the names, for the name rights. So it'll certainly be a little bit of a change. Final topic of the day, my Malkins moments. I have some great Malkins moments for you. 4 key Malkins moments. So, first of all, Ryan Getzlove, speaking of Staples Center, even though the Anaheim Ducks, they play in Anaheim, but yeah, it's close enough with LA. Close enough connection. Not my best segue, but works nonetheless. Ryan Getzlove of the Anaheim Ducks collected his 1,000th point of his NHL career in an assist that he accumulated last night in the 3-2 overtime win over the Washington Capitals. This is a guy that's won a Stanley Cup with the Anaheim Ducks, and it's impressive what Ryan Getzlove has done. And again, to reach that milestone, anytime you can reach a milestone, I think against Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals, that has a slightly different ring to it. And a big shout out to him and his team. The Tampa Bay Rays, Kevin Cash won his 2nd consecutive AL Manager of the Year award. He led the Rays to their 2nd consecutive division title this past year. He became just the 2nd man to win the Manager of the Year award in back-to-back years. The other was the Hall of Famer Bobby Cox, who took the NL League honors in 2004 and 2005 with the Atlanta Braves. But what's impressive about Kevin Cash, this is a guy, first of all, who's 43 years old, 7th season at the helm, is he's been doing this with the 5th smallest spending amount of money that he can spend So the fifth smallest budget in the MLB that he's been able to craft this type of success and these types of successful seasons. That's what's been impressive about what he's been doing is he's really kind of strapped for cash. He's been competing against the veteran Boston Red Sox, who he had a better record than this year, against the high-powered Houston Astros, who he had a better record than this year, competing against the rich is an understatement. The tycoon that is the New York Yankees, and how much money that they have overflowing within that organization. And yet he managed to beat out all those teams for a better record. And, he lost Charlie Morton and he lost Blake Snell in the offseason. Their best starting pitcher, Glasnow, had Tommy John surgery. And yet they still managed to battle through that and finished with the best record in the AL East. They had to deal with the up-and-coming Rays, who have just been on a tear with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the kid who's been unbelievable. They had to deal with that upstart team. And they finished with the third most wins, 100 wins in the majors, despite all that. And only one of their position players, Mike Zunino, actually was named an All-Star this year. So they only had one positional player be named an All-Star this year, which again speaks to his savviness and how good of a coach he really is. Again, this is a guy who was a major league catcher from 2002 to 2010. He served as an advanced scout for the Blue Jays in 2012, as a Cleveland bullpen coach from 2013 to 2014. The Rays hired him in 2014 to succeed Joe Maddon, and the first 3 years were a struggle. Finished sub 500, but then in his fourth year they won 90. They won 90 games, and in 2018 they claimed a wild card spot. In 2019, 2020 they obviously lost to the Dodgers in 6 games, and then last year they set a franchise record for the most wins, third most wins in the MLB last year, with 100. And again, they ultimately lost to the Red Sox in the AL Championship Series this year. They got very close. So he's done a fantastic job with that organization, deserves a lot of credit. And speaking of another individual that deserves a lot of credit is Gabe Kapler, who won the NL Manager of the Year for leading the Giants to 107 wins, which is the most wins in franchise history. In fact, he became just the first Giants manager to win the award since what's his name? Dusty Baker. Blanking on his name this morning. I was thinking about him. Dusty Baker, obviously, I was thinking about the Houston Astros, how he's part of that organization. So with Dusty Baker, again, he received 28 of the 31st place votes. He joins Dusty Baker, who's a 3-time winner, as the only man in Giants history to receive the award. Bruce Bochy, the legendary Giants manager who guided this franchise to 3 World Series titles. That's who Gabe Kapler had to follow after. And it was only fitting that Bochy actually made the statement on MLB Network to him. A nice gesture. Of course, Kapler replaced Bochy after the 2019 season. So this was the first time that they've claimed the division title in 9 years. The Dodgers had won 8 straight division titles leading up to this year, and they managed to outpace them by a game. And they had a great year, and he's a big reason why. And finally, big shout out to the Georgia Bulldogs football program, because this is a program that right now is 10-0 after beating Tennessee, destroying them 41-17. But they're 8-0 in the SEC for the first time in program history. First time ever in program history, they've started out having a perfect season in the SEC. 8-0. Obviously, they still have 2 games remaining in the schedule, but they've never started off 8-0 in SEC play before. Obviously, Kirby Smart has done a fantastic job, and perhaps it looks like they're poised to make a serious run at the title this year. Looks like he's got the best Georgia team that he's ever had, even though one could argue that national championship game against Alabama with Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts. That team was right there. They had a great chance to win that NCAA championship. Obviously, they came up a little bit short, but they have this collision course to play Alabama number 2 in the SEC championship game on December 4th in Atlanta. So we'll see. He might get a chance to exact some revenge at that time. That'll do it for us. That's all the time that I got for today, finishing a couple minutes early. Thank you so much for joining me on Morning Joe every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube page, Morning Joe with Jonah Malkin. Follow me on Twitter at morning_Joe_ or at Jonah Malkin. Follow me on Instagram, jmalkin97, or on TikTok, Jonah Malkin. And as always, have a lovely rest of your morning.